Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. So now he calls Moses and he says, this is what I want you to communicate. I want you to communicate to the house of Jacob. Matter of fact, that's the only time we see that terminology throughout all the scriptures. And so in this particular case, he's speaking not only to their immediate vision of what God is trying to provide for them, but also this future vision of what obviously would come from the house of Jacob. But here he's going to communicate to the house of Jacob and to Israel, the conglomerate of all the people. He says, I want you to tell them, if they will obey my voice and keep my covenant, I'm going to look at them in a way that they've never been considered. I'm going to look at them from my holy throne in heaven and see a peculiar treasure. And I'm going to see a holy nation. And I'm going to see a kingdom of priests. Now think about where they just escaped, or from what they just escaped. Think about them coming out of Egypt. And what was their occupation in Egypt? They were slaves. Did they have any liberty or any freedom? No. As far as the choices that they had as to what they would serve or who they would serve, they had none of those things. They would keep the commandments of Pharaoh in order to stay alive. But here, they're being looked at as a completely and entirely different people. God is looking at them like His creation. He's looking at them and He's seeing a treasure, He's seeing a holy nation, and He's seeing a kingdom of priests. He's laying this out in a very outlined form of what He expects His people to be. From this particular point, after they get past Exodus chapter 20, which is where they're going to receive the 10 commandments of God, they're going to receive the law of God, but also the priesthood is going to be established as we go through the books of law. The tabernacle and its worship, system of worship, is actually going to be at the very forefront of the people's minds. And the idea is that they're going to see themselves as the children of God. Therefore, they're going to bring glory and honor to God through the sacrifices and services in which they would commit to Him. They're going to see all of these things. They're going to start seeing not only the presence of God in their lives, but they're going to see themselves as God's children. That's the remarkable thing about this. I want you to stop and look at something with me, if you will. If you'll turn over to the book of 1 Peter. We'll come back to Exodus here in just a minute. Look at 1 Peter chapter 2. And now, we just got finished studying the books of 1st and 2nd Peter on Wednesday nights. I know it probably seems like a decade ago, but you remember who Peter's writing to when we look at these two books? Well, let me just say it this way. Is he writing to Christians or non-Christians? He's writing to Christians. They're described actually as the 12 tribes. Okay? From the spiritual idea that they would see that they had this lineage or this heritage with God through, not through the lineage of Jewish history, but a lineage through the blood of Christ. And so they would see themselves as the children of God. But Peter writes to them and he reminds them of just how special they are. And not only does God see them this way, Peter's instructing them for them to see this in themselves. Watch. Look at verse 5. He says, "Ye also, as lively stones, are built up a spiritual house and holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifice acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. Wherefore, also it be contained in the Scriptures, Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he that believeth on him shall not be confounded. But you therefore which believe, he is precious. But unto them which be disobedient, the stone which the builders disallowed, the same is made the head of the corner, and a stone of stumbling, and a rock of offense, even to them which stumble at the word, being disobedient, whereunto also they were appointed." Now watch. "But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." Now, we go back and we look at God telling Moses, communicate them and tell them just how I see them. A peculiar treasure, a holy nation, and a kingdom of priests. And that should set them aside from the sense that they would understand that they are precious in the sight of God. And then in Peter's account, he goes back and he looks at the children of God, this time in the Christian age. He's talking about the church, that he would look at them in this particular way and say, make a contrast between the obedient and the disobedient. The disobedient, they won't allow this cornerstone to be the very foundation on which they would build their life. But those who do, well, they're a chosen generation, a holy nation, a peculiar people. Peculiar. Same word that's actually being used back in the book of Exodus, isn't it? When he called them a peculiar treasure. I think sometimes we don't take a lot of time to look at ourselves as who we are. I think sometimes we allow ourselves just to be included with what's around us and not understand just how special we are. Not in a boastful way. We're not here to be boastful or brag or to be out of line in some way because we're children of God. But that is something that we ought to truly appreciate. And the fact is that we have been called out of darkness. We have been delivered into the marvelous light. And guess whose presence we get to be in when we bow before his throne? Whether it be in personal devotion or whether it be in collective worship, like perhaps we'll do in just a few moments. How much do we appreciate that as individuals? How much do we see how precious we are in the sight of God? Think about all the things that we can actually do to ourselves to actually disrupt that. And think, I'm standing before the one who created not only me, but with the very breath of his mouth, created the entire universe. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty special. I know you're not going to agree with that. But I'm not really worried about whether you agree with it, because God says I am. But we all are. That's the type of, that's what we ought to see. That's what we ought to see, just how special we truly are in the sight of God. That's how he was looking at his people, his nation. I'm going to bring you out of slavery, and I'm going to give you the liberty to follow me. Now, go back to Exodus chapter 19. What questions or comments do you have? You might be able to...
His patience.
Huh?
His patience.
His patience, his long suffering. Yeah.
Because you read through here and them, all that he's done, all the miracles that he's done, and just they're constant, the least little thing come up, and that just is like they remember none of it. So.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how easy we forget? And we see it with them, because it seems like almost immediately they forget how powerful God is. And then the murmuring and the complaining. But we must be pretty precious, a precious or peculiar treasure in the sense that he is long-suffering with us. Just think about this. You've heard me say this before, but I'm still amazed at it every time I'm able to get up in the morning. Why did the sun come up this morning? Well, I'm amazed at Jerry's a bit. But really, why did God allow the sun to come up today?
Give those that haven't accepted him another chance.
That's right. I mean, this is his long suffering. He's given us another opportunity. Not only us, but the entire world. He's given them the opportunity to actually consider just who they are in his eyes. Isn't that great? I mean, isn't that a blessing? But what if the sun doesn't come up this morning? Aren't we... Go ahead.
We are happy.
We're happy. That's right, because we're still just as precious in the eyes of God if the sun doesn't come up as if it does. And so how beautiful is this relationship now between us and God? Now, just so the people will understand just how important this is in the mind of God, for them to know that they're in the presence of God, he brings down some lofty scenery for them to look at. Watch verse 7. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded. And all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord had said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the third day. For the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon the Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves, that ye go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall be surely put to death, and there shall be a hand touch it. But there shall surely be stone or shot through, whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up to the mount. And Moses went down from the mount unto the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, Be ready against the third day, come not at your wives. So, here's the angle, if you will, of this entire communication of God to Moses. Moses goes down and he tells all the people, this is what God told me you are to him. This peculiar treasure, this holy nation, this kingdom of priests. That's who you are in the sight of God. But this is what he also said. That he's going to come down on the third day to Mount Sinai. And not in this physical form, not even the fact that you would see his face, but he's going to come in a thick cloud so that you'll know his presence. And we'll see more about this, so they'll really know that this is God. But I'm going to come down to you so that you will see. But you've got to be ready. You've got to be ready to be in the presence of God. So this is what you need to do. You're warned it's going to be the third day. So Moses is to sanctify the people. He's to set them apart. He's to give them instructions about how they're going to approach God. And when you approach God, you do it this way. You're going to go home and you're going to wash all your clothes. And you're going to come before him in a clean slate. Your presence before him must be from a very cleanliness state of mind and in the physical. So they would stand before God and see that they actually, or God would see that they actually put forth the effort in obeying the commands to be prepared for that third day. To be prepared to be in the presence of God. It wasn't just, God will be here any minute. Hurry up, honey. God, well, we might be a little late this morning. It's not that mindset. Rather, it's the mindset that as they come before God, it's a mindset of worship, to pay homage to the one who created them, to give him the glory and the honor as they would stand before them as his peculiar treasure. This holy nation stands before him clean. And this kingdom of priests, what is that? What is a kingdom? A kingdom is a group of individuals who are under the authority of a king. That's a kingdom. In this case, they're under the authority of God. These priests, what are priests? I know we can look at it from just the general worldly sense, but a priest is a servant. He's the servant of God. And so now you've got this kingdom of servants that are all clean, ready, prepared, and standing before God. He had already covered with them very clearly that this was going to be about keeping my word and following my covenant. Now, let's take a break right here for just a second. Just simply, let's make an application to this. Okay? Turn back with me to the book of Acts. Look at Acts chapter 20. this is a familiar passage to you, that here the Apostle Paul is residing with other Christians, and he's about to preach unto them. But there's a sense that's implied here of preparation. Watch. Upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, that Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. The people were gathered in one place, and Paul had actually brought them the message of God. He preached or heralded or proclaimed God's message to them. He knew that tomorrow he was going to have to depart and continue on his journey. But in this particular case, that he was standing before them ready with God's word in which to preach. If he was ready to preach unto them, and obviously he preached unto them into midnight, and that's where all the jokes go, about preaching. If you go over, they'll always say, well, Paul preached till midnight. Well, he may have started at 11:30. We don't know. And so here's the deal. There's an expectation by God to be ready. To be ready to worship. Just flip over to John chapter 4. You remember when Jesus met up with the Samaritan woman there at the well, and she couldn't understand why Jesus would be even talking to her. And he gave her all of these instructions about the water that didn't come from the well, rather than the water of righteousness, would actually be for individuals that they would thirst no more. But she asked him a question about where God's people were actually going to worship him. Was it going to be here, or was it going to be in the mountains? And obviously referring back to something she either understood or misunderstood concerning the Old Testament prophets about those who would go up to Mount Zion and actually worship. Zion there being representative of Jerusalem. But watch. In verse number 23, his answer, he says, "But the hour cometh, and now is, when true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth." Now watch. "For the Father seeketh such to worship him." Now God's looking for something, isn't he? Now, it's the fact that it's the fact that we come together on the first day of the week. That's Acts 20, verse 7. And the idea is that we come to worship God, to participate in the acts of worship, in those 5 acts, and then in participating in those acts of worship, there's obviously a mindset. We could get that from 1 Corinthians 11, that if we partake of the fruit of the vine or the unleavened bread and unworthy manner, we eat and drink damnation to ourselves. We get that. And all of the other acts have that same implication, that we can be here and worship God, but we can be here unprepared and worship God. And see, Jesus is saying that God is seeking true worshipers to worship him in spirit and in truth. Have you ever said this, or ever heard someone else say this, and understand why I'm saying it? Okay? They might leave a worship service and they'll say, I didn't get anything out of it today. And whether it's the innocence of ignorance, or it's just the idea that maybe they didn't do maybe what they should have done before they actually arrived in the preparation process, if they would go back and just think for just a minute, and contemplate on Jesus' response to the Samaritan woman, and say, it's not me that should be looking for something, but rather it's God who's looking for something. God is looking for me to be a true worshiper. It's not that I don't get something out of it. I do. I grow. And I get to be in the presence of God. But again, that's my commitment. That's my loyalty. That's the freedom that He's given me to choose to be a participant in this worship service. And there's great preparation that I make in order to come before Him. But here He is. We have to remember that He's seeking something. And you know where He could find it? Right here. He's seeking me to be that true worshiper. So, if I have that mindset in approaching His honor and His glory, His majesty, then I'm thinking more deeply about what it is I'm offering Him. What I get is just a bonus. I offer Him my very best. Because when you see in verse 24, you see the imperative. God is a spirit, and they that worship Him, listen, must worship Him in spirit and in truth. Okay, now that was the responsibility back on me. It's the idea that I've made this preparation because He's looking for me. He's looking to hear my voice in song. He's looking to hear my participation in the Lord's Supper. He's listening for my voice in prayer. He is watching for my participation in giving. And He's watching for my attention. And when His word is being read and proclaimed, that's what He's seeking. Those true worshipers. Now, back to Exodus chapter 2, or Exodus chapter 19.
That's what it means to worship in spirit and truth.
That's what it means. Yeah, the word spirit there actually speaks of a man's attitude, obviously implying the preparation that he would actually make. Truth, obviously, according to the Word of God. But if I'm worshiping God in spirit and in truth, my participation is what He can see, what He can hear, but also what He expects. Because that's what He's looking for. A lot of times we keep that mindset at the well, and we don't bring it into what God says we are to do in our worship. We forget what God's doing. We think He's just sitting there listening, but He's seeking. He seeks such to worship Him. So, I ought to be easy to find, right? My attitude, my mind, my preparation, I ought to make it really easy for God to see. So I do all of these things. Now, they're about to see the presence of God, and they had to make preparations in all of this as well. And when you come down to verse number 16, God begins to show them He is their God. Not like they haven't seen it before, but this is different. They had seen His power against the very enemies that had been chasing them. But now watch who He is. Verse 16. Woo! Somebody go bribe Dennis. See if we can have a couple more minutes. Okay. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God. And they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire. And the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by a voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount, and the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. And let the priests also, which come near to the Lord, sanctify themselves, lest they break forth upon them. And Moses said unto the Lord, The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for thou chargest us, saying, Set bounds on the mount, and sanctify. And the Lord said unto him, Away, get thee down, and thou shalt come up, thou and Aaron with thee, but let not the priest and the people break through to come unto the Lord, lest he break forth upon them. So Moses went down unto the people, and spake unto them. Now, here it is in a nutshell. God did exactly like He said He was going to do. On the third day, He showed up. He showed up amongst the people, and the fact is that on the third day, in that morning, probably very early, it looked as though they were still in their camps or perhaps in their tents, that He would show up, and in the way that He would appear unto them, that they would tremble. It's hard to tell if this was a fearful tremble or a reverent tremble, because they were already warned that God was going to be there, although wasn't told how or what this might look like. But God set limits. He brought them out to Mount Sinai. Moses did. He brought them there at the very foot of the mountain. And God set limits about how far it was they could go. Because if they went too far and gazed upon the very person of God, then God said that they would perish. But rather, He wanted them to see His glory, His power, His majesty. And so the way that He manifested that was He allowed smoke to go up from the mountain like a furnace, that He would appear unto them as a fire, which He's done before in the burning bush. And God even set limits on Moses that day when He spoke from the burning bush. You remember He told him to remove your shoes from your feet, for that which you stand on is holy ground. So He wouldn't let Moses go any further in an unclean state, but only be able to approach him from even the traditions of the men of that day that would see it being respectful or reverent. And so now he is showing him or manifesting His glory in this way that the people would tremble, and that could only come so far. And He brought them to this particular place, and He set them in the order in which they needed to be in order for them to hear what He was about to communicate. Got so much working against me.
So, I never thought about this, He had really already given them the commandments verbally. Is that right?
No, that comes in chapter 20.
What did He already tell them over here?
What He told them, or what He told Moses earlier about keeping the commandments and the word of the Lord.
So that's
What Moses had already charged them.
So the commandments were not verbally first.
No. They wouldn't know of the commandments until until Moses would come down from Sinai with them written.
So that again, I'm sorry.
They would not know the commandments of God until, the new covenant that would be written upon the tablets of stone. They wouldn't know that until Moses came down with them in a written
It
form.
says, for the Ten Commandments were first spoken orally.
Where are you reading that? Well, yeah, but Jesus Deuteronomy. I don't know, that's just telling me what they're all.